holes in it. But you know, it's a coffee bar, and who hasn't spilled the coffee or run the pot over? I don't want coffee running down through these nail holes and dripping into the top drawer under there. So I'm going to go ahead and fill everything on here before I finish it, for that reason. I don't want any coffee running through it. So that's what is going to happen now. And then I'm going to switch over to a GoPro here, close up, so you can see how I fill these holes. And this process will work on planed off wood. It'll, you know, store-bought wood. If you're going to do a tabletop or you know, whatever it may be, and you're going to maybe just skip plane the top and leave it rough, this process will be hard to work for you, simply because you need to be able to sand it to fill these holes, and that would make, you know, abnormalities in your surface if you were using rough wood and going to stay rough. But this will work on any kind of wood, planed off wood, pine, walnut, anything you may buy in a store, you know, that's nice and new. This process will work. So I'm going to get to that right now. I'm going to switch over to a GoPro so it's close up and you can see how it's done. The first thing I do is I fill these holes with glue. And this will work for the seam. I'll just do everything up close here first, and then, you know, move it around. So then you want to wipe off the excess. You may have to do it twice if that hole is going to fill up with, you know, if the glue is going to drain down in the hole. So you can see these holes, I've put glue in them, and now I'm going to sand it. So you can see these smaller holes, they're now full and smooth to the touch. This bigger hole, the glue ran down in there, but now that that hole is plugged, I should be able to put glue in again. Now these are bigger holes. They must be closed up somewhat because the glue stayed in them. Now here's some holes. These are a little bigger. It may take a couple of times of filling them and sanding. Those holes are big enough, that glue may run down in there. However, once you do that, then that'll set up in there, and then the next time it won't. So there still is a little bit of a ridge there, but look right here. This is a bigger hole that's not wanting to fill. So here's what you can do. Just push that over there and put that on there. Take some of that dust, put that on there, and just let it set a while and dry. Then you can sand it right off. Alright, so got a little one right there, there, there. And these things will work on any size tabletop, anything. One out there, one out there. This bigger one, it's going to take a little bit more. do that. Just kind of wipe it off. Alright, let's do one more right there, and that's probably gonna, this big one, it filled in better than I thought it would. It's got a little depression. I think I'll put a little bit more on there. And then that'll do that. So right here is a little tiny crack in the seam. Right here. So I'm going to fill that, and I'll just run this glue right down that crack. And then you just kind of fill in the crack, wipe off as much glue as you can, and then sand it. And that crack is gone. Now, what I'm using here on this initial is 60 grit sandpaper, and then when I do the final on it, I'll go to probably 220 grit, but initially here I'm using 60 grit. So it looks like that crack is full of glue. Now sand is a spot right here that, oh, just abnormality in the wood right there. So what I'm going to do there is put glue on it, and then look here, you take this off, it's full of fine dust. Now I'm going to cover that with dust. Now I'm just going to kind of push that in there. And then I'll let that dry. And so when that dries, I'll sweep off this dust and then sand it, and that little abnormality will be gone. Out here's another spot. This one you have to be kind of careful with. It's on this rounded edge. And here's a bigger spot. This spot right here, I'm going to treat a little differently, because sanding is going to, you could really knock that rounded edge off. Alright, so this has had some time to dry, these two places. So I'm just going to knock this off and sand this off. So when you get down here where a rounded edge, it's better to just do it by hand. Because if I put that sander on here, it's too easy to screw with my rounded edge. So whenever you're working on a rounded edge, be very careful. Consider doing it by hand. But things look very good. So now what I'm going to do is put glue on this edge right here. Do the same thing I did everywhere else. And then that should wind this up. So by shooting this with alcohol, if there's any glue left behind, it'll show. And you don't want any glue left, because it will show up like a beacon when you go to put your finish on. So what I'm looking for, and I don't see any yet, any places where I didn't get the glue off. And it looks like I got all of the glue off. So now as soon as this alcohol evaporates, I'm going to go over this with 200 grit sandpaper. So what I'm doing now is just wiping off the dust and just making sure there's no places showing with glue. And if there's any place showing with glue, I'll have to sand those areas, but I don't see anything. I think we're pretty good shape. So I'd say that's a pretty clean surface. Time to let that evaporate, and then I will put the finish on there. While we're waiting, on the back side, where these pocket screws are, those don't matter. Those are up under the counter. Nobody can see them. But these, this part kind of sticks out because this is a deeper countertop than a 24-inch countertop. I'm not too worried about putting varnish under here, but I do want, when you put your hand under it, I don't want you feeling holes like this. So I went on ahead and plugged those. It's going to make a heck of a countertop for that coffee bar.